Hi everyone, my name's Danielle, and for this interactive book talk, I chose the book Giraffes Can't Dance by Giles Andrier, with illustrations by Guy Parker Rees. And I chose this book for a number of reasons, specifically for students in the 2nd to 3rd grade. I think the theme in the story of kind of figuring out your own personal identity and not listening to those around you when they say maybe negative things or that you can't do something, I think is great for students at this age when they're really trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do in school or what they're good at or what they can and can't do. And I think it's a really fun way to explore that idea. And also the pictures are great in it, the illustrations are excellent. The way the font is written in a non-traditional way, all curvy and kind of all over the place, I think is fun for the students. And overall, I think the students really get a lot of enjoyment out of the book, and they can really benefit again from the theme of the story. And it could even be an entrance to another subject such as science, where they talk about giraffes' body form or different animals in the jungle. It's just a fun way to open a variety of different lessons, and I think it's really great for students probably in the 2nd to 3rd grade. Okay, boys and girls, the title of this book is Giraffes Can't Dance by Giles Andrier, with illustrations by Guy Parker Rees. Now we see here it says giraffes can't dance, but looking at the picture here, can someone make a prediction and maybe tell me what they think might happen in the story? That's a good prediction. Maybe the giraffes can't dance, and we're not sure of it yet. So let's find out if your predictions are right. Giraffes can't dance. Gerald was a tall giraffe whose neck was long and slim, but his knees were awfully crooked and his legs were rather thin. He was very good at standing still and munching shoots off trees, but when he tried to run around, he buckled at the knees. So we see here that Gerald is falling because he's not very good. He's a little clumsy. Now every year in Africa, they hold the jungle dance, where every single animal turns up to skip and prance. And this year, when the day arrived, poor Gerald felt so sad, because when it came to dancing, he was really very bad. The warthogs started waltzing, the rhinos rock and rolled, the lions danced a tango that was elegant and bold. So we see here, all the different animals know their own dances, and they're very good at it. The chimps all did a cha-cha with a very Latin feel, and 8 baboons then teamed up for a splendid Scottish reel. Gerald swallowed bravely as he walked toward the floor, but the lions saw him coming, and they soon began to roar. Hey, look at clumsy Gerald, all the animals sneered. Giraffes can't dance, you silly fool. Oh, Gerald, you're so weird. So all the animals in the story are telling Gerald he can't dance. So how do you guys think how do you think that made Gerald feel when he's about to go up there? He's all brave and ready to go dance, and all of a sudden all these animals are telling him that he can't. How would that make you feel if you were in Gerald's position and you were about to go up there and do a boogie and all your friends told you that you couldn't? Let's see what Gerald does. Gerald simply froze up. He was rooted to the spot. They're right, he thought. I'm useless. Oh, I feel like such a clot. So he crept off from the dance floor and he started walking home. He'd never felt so sad before. He'd so sad and so alone. Then he found a little clearing and he looked up at the sky. The moon can be so beautiful, he whispered with a sigh. Excuse me, coughed a cricket, who'd seen Gerald earlier on, but sometimes when you're different, you just need a different song. Listen to the swaying grass and listen to the trees. To me, the sweetest music is those branches in the breeze. So imagine that lovely moon is playing just for you. Everything makes music if you really want it to. With that, the cricket smiled and picked up his violin. Then Gerald felt his body do the most amazing thing. What do you think's going to happen, guys? His hoofs started shuffling, making circles on the ground. His neck was gently swaying. His tail was swishing round. Gerald's dancing. The cricket got him to dance. He threw his legs out sideways. He swung them everywhere. He did a backward somersault and leapt into the air. Gerald felt so wonderful. His mouth was open wide. "I'm dancing, yes, I'm dancing. I'm dancing," Gerald cried. Then one by one each animal who'd been there at the dance arrived while Gerald boogied and watched him quite entranced. They shouted, "It's a miracle! We must be in a dream. Gerald's the best dancer that we've ever seen." "How did you learn to dance like that? Please, Gerald, tell us how." But Gerald simply twirled around and finished with a bow. Then he raised his head and looked up at the moon and stars above. "We all can dance," he said, "when we find music that we love." So in the story, all the animals kind of judged Gerald by his cover and said, "Oh, giraffes can't dance, we can't do that, or you can't do that. All the other animals can dance, but giraffes can't dance." So we're always told you don't judge a book by its cover. But do you think it was maybe a little difficult for the animals to actually do something like that, whereas they should have maybe accepted Gerald and taken him in or taught him how to dance or do something like that? Do you think it's always easy for people to say something and do something, the same thing that they're saying before? Sometimes it's a little difficult for people to say one thing and also follow through with it, or maybe they'll do another thing. So my rationale behind this book, there were a couple different reasons why I chose the questions that I did and the reasons that I incorporated the kind of interactive, the dancing and the questioning and kind of prompting the students. First, with the prediction in the beginning, that's definitely a critical thinking skill, is making plausible inferences and predictions or interpretations. I'm asking the students to kind of see the title as one thing and then notice the actual cover art as another and think, hey, maybe later in the story giraffes can dance, or maybe they're able to and it's just a play on words. I think it really gets the students involved actively and gets their imagination going or gets their thought process going before you even start the book. So that's one thing that I did, made sure to incorporate that for the students. I think the students really benefit from that pre-reading tactic of looking at the cover art and really seeing, hey, it's saying one thing, but the art is showing another thing. Halfway through in the story, when all the animals are at the dance and they're all boogieing and they're telling Gerald that he can't dance, I asked the students, do you think it was fair for them to say that? And that's another critical thinking skill of analyzing or evaluating actions or policies. So I'm asking the students to look at what the animals are saying to Gerald and kind of tell me whether, is that fair? Are they passing judgment? Are they acting appropriately, or should they have done it a different way? And the students can really give me feedback and say, well, it's not very nice. I wouldn't like to be treated like that if I were Gerald, or if I were in Gerald's shoes, then I would feel sad, or just kind of give me feedback to what is appropriate and what is not appropriate with regard to actions and policies of other people. The students are really able to look at that from an outside point of view and add their own input and also tell me whether it's appropriate or not. Then at the end, when I asked the students, you don't judge a book by its cover, but did the animals really do that, or should they not have done that? And that is another critical thinking skill of comparing and contrasting ideas with practice. So there's that idea of you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but in practice it was a lot more difficult for the animals in the story to actually not judge a book by its cover. And while it's not outright stated anywhere in the story, don't judge a book by its cover, it's one of those universal ideas, especially for students at a young age like 2nd or 3rd grade, when they're kind of developing that whole the golden rule and you don't judge a book by its cover, and they're developing their own values and personal traits that will really carry through with them later in life. So I think it was really important to kind of draw that whole process back into, okay, boys and girls, do you think that you should have done this, or do you think that the animals in the story could have behaved differently or acted differently toward Gerald, and they can even give me suggestions earlier on in the story of, oh, the animals could have taught him to do the waltz or taught him to do the tango like the warthogs, or taught him to rock and roll like the other animals in the story. And I think that students really, it opens the door for a great interactive discussion of what the students could do different, or what the animals in the story could do differently, and how the animals could really respond more positively to someone who's a little different than them. And I chose this story also because it offers great interactive feedback with the students, dramatizing, talking back, critiquing, inserting, taking over. With the dancing scenes, the students can do a boogie or do their own little dance during the jungle dance, or talking back, they can say, well, that's not nice, or at the end of the story, the students can say, Gerald can dance, or look how exciting, and really provide their own feedback and kind of jump into the story as it's going. It's one of those stories that's great just because of all the internal vocalization with Gerald saying, oh, I can't do this, and the external vocalization of all the other animals saying, oh, Gerald, you can't do this. And overall, I think the students really get in there and get involved, and that's great. So with critiquing and controlling, which is another aspect of that student interactive response, that's why I asked the question, or have students ask the question, what would you do if someone told you that you can't dance, or how would you feel? Because it really gets the students to actively think about the story and actively critique it themselves, put themselves in the situation to see how they would act or what they would do differently and that kind of thing. And it really, like I said, opens the door for some excellent feedback and gets the students really involved. Inserting, this is great. I mean, they're at a jungle dance. Mary Sue can't dance, or I think Mary Sue would do an excellent waltz. Just using names, throwing other classmates' names in there, kind of getting them involved. Oh, so-and-so can play the violin, or so-and-so can dance great. So-and-so can do breakdancing, and then maybe someone can break off and do a little breakdancing. I just think overall the whole thing is just so perfectly interactive for the students and offers them a variety of times where they can jump in and respond and take over the book and kind of control it themselves, whereas it's not just me reading a story to them or just going through the story and then closing it up and being like finished. So in the story, I mean, Gerald progresses quite rapidly. In the beginning, he's really shy and embarrassed, and he's not very good at dancing, and he doesn't really have his own feel. So he sees all the other animals dancing, and he feels that he can't dance and that he's not good enough to be at the jungle dance, especially when all the other animals tell him that he's not. So toward the end of the story, when he figures out his own rhythm and his own music, and all the animals ask him, teach us how to dance, because we said you couldn't, and now you're better than all of us. And Gerald, instead of saying, well, you do this and this and this, he just says, all of you can dance, you're all special, you can all dance your own dance, you just have to find the right music. So it goes along with, you have to find your right identity, and you have to develop as a person throughout the story like Gerald did. You figure it out yourself, and you develop your own story, and you figure out what's your personal song and what makes you dance. And I think the students at this age especially really benefit from the idea of figuring yourself out. Thank you.